Hello and welcome to Medill Newsmakers. I'm Katelyn Sabater. At about 5 months into 2018, there have already been 23 school shootings where someone was hurt or killed. That averages out to a shooting a week. According to a 2017 safety study, Americans are 50% more likely to die by a firearm than by dying while riding inside a car, truck, or van. These school shootings seem to be a problem of today, but they've plagued the U.S. for decades. Before Santa Fe, before Parkland, before Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech, or even Columbine, there was Winnetka in 1988.
The suspect has been found and she is dead. The situation is over.
That was the announcement of the fatal conclusion of the day-long rampage of Lori Dan, the woman who changed a quiet spring morning in an affluent North Shore suburb into a scene of confusion and grief.
30 years ago, Lori Dan came to this elementary school where she shot 6 children, killing 1.
The tragic series of events began at about 9 o'clock when Dan attempted to start a fire at Highland Park School. At 10:15, she arrived at the home of the family she babysat for, starting a fire there. The mother and 2 children were briefly trapped in the basement, having to crawl out of a basement window to safety. By then, Dan was on the way to Hubbard Woods Elementary School. Upon hearing of the shooting, parents quickly gathered in front of the school.
As I got closer, I heard the sirens and I knew it was bad. And then when I got here, they told me, and I found out my son was okay. But then all the other kids, they said they notified the parents of the ones that were shot.
After firing shots, Lori Dan ended up here at this home on Kent Road.
Has anyone been shot in...
Yeah, my 20-year-old swimming championship.
What's your son?
What's his name?
Yes, Philip.
She wounded 20-year-old Phil Andrew when he tried to take the gun away from her. She then barricaded herself in his house against police for 8 hours before turning the gun on herself. Lori Dan had a history of mental illness, a police record, and a license to carry a .357 Magnum.
And after the break, we have the opportunity to hear from the survivor himself, Phil Andrew. Stay with us.
At Northwestern, we're wildcats in every way.
Why spend your entire life looking for some on-ramp to the road to opportunity when there's already a well-traveled path? So you may be wondering, what does that path look like? Is it paved with gold? Well, here's a hint. It's actually paved with purple. Northwestern University. Your road starts here.
Survivor Phil Andrew is here to talk to us about gun violence and school shootings, issues that shocked the nation 30 years ago, but in today's society has become a regular occurrence. Hi Phil, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be with you.
So can you talk to me a little bit about that day 30 years ago?
What happened is that she had attacked a grade school and shot 6 elementary school students. In the course of her escape, she crashed her car near my childhood home, entered our home and held my mother, father, and I at gunpoint. We talked to her for quite a while, usually primarily just using empathy and trying to reassure her, but she wasn't willing to give up the guns, and I talked her into letting my parents go. Then I was left one-on-one with her, and knowing that it was just a matter of time before police were to enter, I felt that this was the right time for me to attempt to disarm her. I failed in that attempt and was shot in the right side of my chest, and was the belief that I was going to get caught in crossfire.
And so with something like that, do you feel like you've moved on? Do you ever move on with such a tragedy?
Well, I think that working on trying to make sure something like that doesn't happen again is actually part of how you move on. It's taken a long time to get the public's attention around this. I would never have believed that it would take 30 years to raise this to a level of consciousness, and unfortunately, thousands and thousands of lives. This is now the #1 cause of death for African American youth. It's the 3rd leading cause of death for teenagers. Gunfire is. So I think that there's a lot we have to do to make sure school shootings and urban violence doesn't happen to anyone.
And so you worked for the FBI for 21 years. How did that incident shape your direction in life?
Well, I always wanted to be involved in law enforcement. I thought after a couple years in the FBI, I became a crisis negotiator, a hostage negotiator for the FBI. Probably one of the few that actually had been a hostage at one point. And I think that really prepared me to really empathize with families that are in really desperate circumstances, and leverage empathetic skills to resolve incidents peacefully.
And so you were nominated this year as Director of Violence Prevention by the ARCHDIOCESE of Chicago. Can you explain a little bit what that title entails?
Yes, so this is a new role for the Archdiocese, and I'm new to the role, the Director of Violence Prevention, and we're focused on really, as comprehensive as this problem is, we are trying to bring comprehensive solutions. So first, the Archdiocese has 214 schools and 324 parishes. We want those parishes and schools to have safety plans and crisis management plans. But we also want to instill a culture of safety, leveraging what the church is already good at, training people in nonviolence, restorative justice, and conflict resolution, because we think that those paired with safety and education is an important way to keep communities safe. The other thing that we're focused on is building coalitions, both civic and faith, interfaith coalitions, to advocate for reasonable firearm policy reform. This is a very contentious issue in the country, but what we know is that most people already agree on this, and that really the only folks that divide us on this are an industry that makes money selling guns and their puppets in the leadership of the National Rifle Association.
And so there's a new generation that's now dealing with this problem, as you mentioned. Is there any advice you'd give to those youth?
Well, in fact, I think it's the opposite. I think we should take the advice of the youth. This is a generation that is growing up with school shootings. They're going to schools and knowing that they're not safe, and that the measures that government and policymakers are taking are not designed to keep them safe. So the anxiety that they feel is real, and I think what they're telling us is that they want more action. So I think we should listen to the youth and do what they're saying. We should make it very difficult for minors to get high-capacity military assault style weapons, and we should have universal background checks, and we should have laws, red flag laws, to take guns away from dangerous people. So I think that we have to listen to the youth and start doing what they tell us that they need to feel secure in their schools.
What is your hope for the future then?
Well, my hope for the future is that these brave, courageous youth actually take the day, that they register to vote, that they vote their conscience, and that they hold policymakers accountable. Again, this is an issue that we should have resolved 30 years ago. A very, very extreme minority is what's causing all the controversy. Other countries don't have this. They have video games, they have mental health problems, they have all the same difficulties in communities that we do. What they don't have is a proliferation of firearms, and that's something that we need to address to move forward.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Up next, we'll show you the fruit of Andrew's labor. We'll take you to a place where youth are doing their best to prevent gun violence.
Go you Northwestern, go Northwestern, break right through that. With our colors flying, we will cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory. Sweet victory spread for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
Why hang around waiting for opportunity to knock when instead you can track opportunity down and knock on its door? You might ask, what's the best way to identify where opportunity lives? Here's a hint. Its door is colored purple. Northwestern University. Opportunity awaits your knock.
Brave, Bold Resistance Against Violence Everywhere is a peer youth council here in Chicago geared toward violence prevention and creating agents of social change.
It's our memorial wall, and it's people we've lost to gun violence. So just last year we had to add an extension. So at first, for years it was just this side with all of these pictures on here, but then unfortunately because the violence, we had to add another addition to the wall.
The Arc of St. Sabina, located in the south side of Chicago, started Brave, the Violence Prevention Youth Council, in 2012. 28-year-old Lamar Johnson is the coordinator of the Brave youth leaders.
Over time, these young people begin to recruit other young people, like their friends or from other schools, and then it just blew up to a whole program where we teach young people how to be advocates for their community, as well as learning policy, but most of all, it's about leadership. Teaching these kids how can they use their voices and their individualities to create change that they want to see.
Brave has been protesting gun violence way before the infamous school walkouts and protests of 2018.
What makes Brave unique is Brave has already been doing this before the school shooting thing started happening. Before, for some reason in this country, young people have a love and a fad for guns. That's not just when they shoot up a school. In our community, our young people have a love fest for guns, for killing each other when they're not in school. Wherever we are, in different places, whether in school, in front of a camera, not.
Lamar believes there can be a quick fix to gun violence.
People put their money where their mouth is. Gun violence could be solved like any other issue in America. You gotta pay for it. When there was so many car accidents in the 80s and the early 90s, it was an epidemic. But then you start seeing campaigns for driving safe. So you put money, you put time and energy into creating safety. People still have car accidents, but the numbers drop tremendously.
In 2006, Trayvon Bosley's older brother was shot and killed at church, putting Trayvon in the fight against gun violence.
My family connected with Father Mike, and Father Mike introduced me to the group here called the Brave Youth Leaders. And ever since then, I've just been a part of the group because they were doing positive things in the community, and I just really wanted to be a part of that.
This year, he had the opportunity to speak to about 800,000 people at the March for Our Lives rally in Washington, D.C.
I'm not gonna lie, I was extremely nervous going out there, but after I was done, it made me extremely happy just to be speaking to so many people, because I've been trying to do this activism and anti-violence movement, and I've been advocating for a very long time. And most times people don't listen to day-to-day shooting victims or our solutions. So to have that scale and speak to that many people was something new and amazing to me.
Trayvon has some advice for people who may be apprehensive in joining the fight against gun violence.
You have to move as soon as possible because violence isn't stopping for any of us. So we can't be nervous about anything because the violence is going to continue unless we go out into the community to stop it.
Several cities and states are tired of holding their breath and have taken matters into their own hands in regards to gun laws. Raising the age limit for owning a gun, banning bump stocks, and increasing gun restrictions for people convicted of domestic abuse are a few of the changes we have seen this year. Officials in Deerfield, Illinois, passed a law that not only bans assault weapons, but will penalize residents who don't forfeit or secure weapons by June 13th. Other organizations, aside from Brave, are also looking to bring an end to gun violence in the city. Richard Foster Shelton will have more on that story when we return to Medill Newsmakers.